Paper Mill Playhouse acknowledges that our theater stands on the traditional land of the Lenni Lenape. We honor the land and the indigenous people who inhabited it for thousands of years before European settlers arrived.
Welcome to Paper Mill Prologues. I'm Lorna Jordan, Manager of Outreach Programs here at Paper Mill Playhouse, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the fourth show of our 84th season, Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. The goal of Prologues is to give our audience an extra layer of insight and context for our productions by exploring some of the themes and history behind each show. Agatha Christie has been dubbed the Queen of Crime for having written 66 detective novels and 14 short story collections revolving around fictional detectives Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. Her novel, Murder on the Orient Express, has captivated both readers and audiences for close to a century. Filled with intrigue, malice, and endless twists and turns, it is a paragon of the murder mystery genre. Today, we'll take a deeper look into our love of the murder mystery and our desire to resolve the question, whodunit? What is it that has kept the genre alive from its origins in the mid-19th century to today, and what keeps us coming back for more? Get ready to hop on board to unravel some of the mysteries of mystery. While Agatha Christie's name is practically synonymous with mystery, what we know today as the murder mystery genre really got its start in the early 19th century. With the dawning of the Industrial Revolution, many people began moving to cities, increasing urbanization. Before the Revolution, small towns got by with a night watchman or a constable. Being within such an intimate community, these constables tended to know their neighbors well, and so no gathering of clues or questioning of suspects needed. Crimes were either easily solved or simply impossible. With the rise of urbanization and an influx of population into a concentrated area, the role of the sleuth was born. In London, the Metropolitan Police, which we now know as Scotland Yard, was formed in 1829. Just a dozen years later, Edgar Allan Poe would publish The Murders in the Rue Morgue, which would be credited as the first modern detective story and would arguably change the face of world literature. In fact, the word detective only started being used in the mid-19th century. The sleuth provided rich fodder for novel writers, and society was eager to understand this emerging profession. Suddenly, authors were providing a glimpse into the dark underbellies of urban life, and the ray of hope embodied by the brilliant detective. The reader is a virtual companion to the detective, finding the clues and solving the case right alongside the hero, yet in the safety of their own world. Poe's novel centered on genius detective C. Auguste Dupin, working to solve the murders of two women in Paris by investigating the crime scene and interviewing potential suspects. Dupin, the first fictional detective, would go on to influence characters like Sherlock Holmes and Christie's own Hercule Poirot. Poe used the character of Dupin in multiple works, establishing him as a career detective, another choice that would prove influential to the genre. Since the introduction of the detective story, the murder mystery genre has continued to develop and has spawned several subgenres, including police procedural, historical, cozy, legal, locked room, and much more, each appealing in its own way. When discussing the major impact these detective stories and the murder mystery genre itself had on the general public, we must explore the social and historical context that made audiences embrace these stories in the first place. At the turn of the century, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes was dazzling readers with his deductive reasoning, just as major political, economic, social, and technological changes were occurring. With so much upheaval, there's a great appeal in such logical reasoning. During the post-World War I era and the years of the Great Depression, the general public began to flock to escapist storytelling that was easily accessible and appealing to the masses. During the 20s and 30s, readers would latch onto pulp magazines due to their sensational, provocative subject matter. Many stories would find wide popularity in these pulp magazines, such as Dashiell Hammett's The Maltese Falcon, as well as the works of H.P. Lovecraft. Pulp magazines' inexpensiveness and exploration into niche subgenres dealing with crime, mystery, horror, and fantasy would become a popular form of media along with film and radio. The genre of pulp fiction, having an established fan base of its own, would ultimately be a major influence on myriad genres that intersected with it, including the genre of superhero comic books. Among those authors being published in pulp magazines was a young Agatha Christie. Beginning with The Mysterious Affair at Styles, featuring the debut of Detective Hercule Poirot, Christie established herself as a novelist, just as the world was moving away from the First World War and toward the Second. Society longed to be comforted and reassured that good would inevitably triumph over evil, and living through the war herself and having been a nurse in the First World War, Christie knew from experience the toll of uncertainty. Her novels delivered the certainty that society could not. Not only did her puzzling mysteries prove a welcome distraction, but her black-hearted villains were sure to get their comeuppance. One of the pillars of Christie's writing was the use of her own lived experiences as inspiration. In fact, Murder on the Orient Express was inspired in part by a highly publicized crime of that time. Her travels to Egypt and Asia, and even aboard the actual Orient Express, played heavily in her writing. And while now we can recognize the Western gaze which she applied to certain cultures, exoticizing them, she also introduced her readers to foreign worlds and experiences.
On a mysterious journey down the Nile to the great wonders of the world, where the biggest wonder of them all is whodunit.
As readers' consumption of murder mystery novels continued to grow, film studios clamored to bring detective stories to the silver screen. With the dawning of the Cold War came a growing anxiety and sense of distrust. As McCarthyism swept the country, the lines of good and evil blurred. The mystery genre responded in the 1940s and 50s with the rise of film noir.
Mildred, a name gasped in the night, the one last word of a dying man. But one word that tells 1,000 stories of a woman who left her mark on every man she met.
These dark and gritty films showcased post-war disillusionment and realism by featuring more challenging social issues, reflecting the shifting consciousness of society.
Yes, you'll read the big black headlines about Norma Desmond and this Hollywood scandal. But you'll never read the true story about the rest of us who were part of it.
I can't stand it anymore. What if they do hang me?
They're not going to hang you, baby.
It's better than going on this way.
They're not going to hang you. Because you're going to do it and I'm going to help you.
Yes, from the moment they met, it was murder.
How long has this been going on?
Monty's going to divorce you and marry me. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Great divides continued to emerge during the tumultuous 60s era. The dawning of the civil rights movement, as well as the Vietnam War, revealed the undeniable cracks in the facade of society. As it became more difficult to simply turn a blind eye, realistic depictions of crime, such as Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, became popular. Capote had read an article about a brutal, unsolved murder of a Kansas farmer and his family in 1959. He proceeded to travel to the scene of the crime and took a journalistic approach, questioning and interviewing townspeople. His book drew from haunting descriptions of the victims, notes on their community, and the details from the murderers themselves. When the book was published in 1965, Capote's writing profoundly reflected themes on crime and punishment, the nature of evil, and the so-called American dream. Through the 70s and 80s, realistic depictions continued to dominate the genre. In the 70s, Chester Himes, author of the Harlem Detective series, which featured the first literary black detectives, painted a New York society where the respected and powerful members conspired to keep the marginalized forever oppressed. This gritty, violent portrayal provided the literary world with black heroes, saving their own streets by any means necessary.
King Kong and Frankenstein.
Hey, what kind of talk is that, soul brother? Don't you know that black is beautiful?
In 1982, Sue Grafton published the first in her alphabet series, A is for Alibi. This novel introduced readers to hard-boiled detective Kinsey Milhone, who drank rot-gut wine, lived alone, and didn't bow down to the patriarchal authority or the rich and powerful. At the peak of the women's liberation movement, after 20 years of perseverance, Grafton, along with other contemporary female writers, would change the face of detective fiction forever, no longer relying on sexist, racist, and nativist tropes. While mystery novels continue to thrive, how we consume murder mysteries has evolved into a plethora of media. From podcasts like My Favorite Murder and Crime Junkie to TV shows like Dahmer and Making a Murderer, true crime is all around us. From a psychological perspective, there are plenty of theories about why we love it. Take, for instance, this psychologist.
All human beings are interested in predicting. That's sort of one of the main functions of the human brain, is to be predictive. And that's obviously evolutionarily beneficial to us if we can predict what's going to happen in the future. True crime allows us to kind of play out various scenarios in our head, the what ifs, and allows us to then, based on the sort of scenario that we're imagining or we're hearing about, to come up with alternative strategies that might give us a better result in the end compared to what the victim endured.
Of course, true crime and the mystery genre as a whole is far from simplistic. The stories that we focus on, that get repeated in the news cycle or become inspiration for fiction novels, often focus on situations that are extraordinary. Jane Coaston, host of the New York Times podcast, The Argument, comments.
It's complicated because I think that I am always thinking about, like, what are the stories that we aren't getting told? True crime often wants to illustrate the most insane and shocking stories, when so often crime, particularly crime that impacts minorities or the people who are most impacted by crime, isn't shocking.
While true crime has proved itself a mainstay in our popular culture, we still love to escape to a classic murder mystery. In fact, the whodunit is in the midst of a resurgence. Shows and films like the popular Knives Out have flooded our screens, big and small.
There's been a murder, and the killer is in plain sight. For at least one person, this is not a game.
Are you associated with the deceased?
No. We're neighbors in the building.
So you don't know him?
Just in passing. Not his passing. No, yes, when we passed by him. Before he passed.
That's right.
Aloha. Happy to be here.
We're on our honeymoon.
You're such valued guests. Welcome to the White Lotus.
And recent adaptations of Agatha Christie's very own Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express have been updated to reflect our contemporary society. In fact, Christie's murder mystery play, The Mousetrap, which premiered in London in October 1952, is still running today, making it the longest-running play in the world, with over 28,000 performances, and has been seen by over 10 million people. So, is it our love of the genius hero that keeps us coming back? Is it our desire to see evil get its just desserts? Is it the comfort of knowing danger is out there while we remain safe? Is it simply the thrill of solving the puzzle? Is it a need to empathize, or simply a fascination with the macabre? The possibilities are endless. Perhaps the lure of mystery is different for each, and we invite you to investigate your own motives. But one thing's for sure, Murder on the Orient Express is a classic, and you are about to see why. So hurry up and grab your ticket. The Orient Express is about to leave the station. Enjoy the show.